"Get her away from this table. She doesn't belong here." Those words didn't come from a stranger. They came from my own daughter-in-law, Sloane, in the middle of my company's anniversary gala. The ballroom lights glared down, chandeliers sparkling like frozen fire above us, while dozens of executives and clients turned their heads. I froze. For a second, I couldn't even breathe. Sloane's voice dripped with disdain as she smirked at the crowd. "She's nothing more than a poor woman leeching off my husband." Gasps scattered across the room. The sting of shame burned hotter than the spotlight shining on my face. I felt every eye tracing my plain dress, the calloused hands I had never hidden the shoes that had carried me through years of hard work. In that moment, the glittering ballroom floor might as well have been quicksand swallowing me whole. Andre, my son, sat rigid at the head table. His eyes darted away, lips pressed tight as if silence could shield him from choosing sides. My heart cracked, not just from the insult, but from his refusal to speak. I wanted to shout to remind everyone whose sweat built this company, from janitorial contracts to multi-million-dollar facilities management. Instead, my throat closed. I stood there trembling while a security guard hovered uncertainly, waiting for Sloane's signal. A waiter brushed past, and a glass of champagne tipped, spilling cold liquid down my sleeve. The humiliation was complete. Guests whispered. A young employee raised his phone, recording the scene. I clenched my fists, nails biting into my palms. My voice finally slipped out low, but steady, though no one seemed to hear over the murmur of gossip. "I built this with these hands." And yet I was treated like an intruder at my own table. I turned, forcing my legs toward the balcony doors. The massive screen behind the stage flashed the company logo, my company's name shining bold, while I slipped out into the night air, carrying a secret no one else in that room yet knew. My name is Loretta Price. I am 58 years old, a widow and the mother of one son. People see me and assume I am poor because I still wear the same simple dresses, keep my hair tied back without fuss, and walk into every room as if I am invisible. They don't know the years etched into these hands or the sacrifices that shaped every line across my face. I was born in Atlanta, in a neighborhood where survival was the only dream most of us had. My mother worked double shifts as a nurse's aide, and my father drove cabs until his body gave out. They didn't leave me money, but they gave me grit, and that grit became my inheritance. I married young to a man named Charles. He wasn't rich either, but he had a good laugh, a steady back, and the will to work. We were partners in everything: scrubbing, saving, praying. He used to tell me, "Loretta, the day will come when all this sweat will turn into something we can hand to Andre." I believed him with every ounce of my soul, but then cancer stole him before Andre even turned 15. One day, Charles was climbing ladders with me to clean windows. 6 months later, I was standing beside his coffin. My world collapsed, but I didn't allow myself to collapse with it. I had a boy to raise and bills stacked higher than our kitchen counter. So I picked up the mop, the broom, the bucket, and I started bidding on small contracts myself. At first, it was just me and one other woman scrubbing office floors at midnight. I carried a pager and drove a beat-up van that coughed smoke every time I turned the key. Some nights, Andre would sleep in the back while I polished tile under fluorescent lights. I told myself, keep pushing, keep building. Slowly, the contracts grew. A clinic, then a hospital wing, then an entire school district. I studied every inch of business law I could borrow from the library. I wrote proposals at the kitchen table, circling spelling mistakes with red pen until the words looked professional enough. By the time Andre reached college, I had 10 crews on payroll. I made sure his tuition was paid in full, not with loans, but with hours of my own labor. He walked onto campus debt-free because I refused to let my son begin life chained the way I had been. And yet, I kept my life plain. I didn't buy designer clothes, didn't move into a mansion, didn't trade my faith for glitter. My joy was in building something sturdy, something that could outlive me. I tucked away every dollar I could, not for jewelry or status, but for the future. When the company had grown beyond my 2 hands, I decided it was time for Andre to step forward. He was bright, quick with numbers, charismatic enough to win clients I never could. I trusted him. I wanted him to lead. So I placed him at the front of the stage while I stepped quietly into the shadows. But I never gave up ownership. Years earlier, guided by a lawyer named Felicia Grant, I signed a living trust and registered every share under my name. Andre managed yes. He signed checks, directed staff sat at the boardroom table. But the papers, those critical documents with embossed seals and notarized signatures, always bore my name as majority owner. Only Felicia and my CFO Ramon knew the truth. I thought my humility would protect me. I believed stepping aside would teach my son responsibility and character. Instead, it opened the door for Sloane, his wife, to fill the silence with her own voice, one dripping with contempt. Now, as I looked back on the years of calluses and sacrifice, I realized the bitter irony, the very simplicity that once gave me strength, was now being twisted into a weapon against me. To them, plainness meant weakness. To me, it had always meant focus, and that focus was about to be tested in ways I had never imagined. The first signs were small, like pebbles before a landslide. At staff meetings, Sloane would glance at me with a smile that wasn't a smile at all. She would praise Andre for decisions I had quietly guided, then roll her eyes when I spoke up about budgets or safety policies. It seemed harmless at first, but soon those looks sharpened into words. "Loretta, maybe it's better if you just enjoy retirement," she said one morning after a board briefing. Her tone was coated with honey, but the sting lay underneath. "You've worked so hard, and the company needs a fresh image now." Retirement, I thought. My blood, my sweat, my vision built this place. Still, I swallowed the insult. I told myself it was only insecurity on her part, that Andre would not let such arrogance root itself, but the roots spread quickly. One afternoon, I showed up at headquarters for a scheduled operations meeting. My badge no longer opened the door. I stood outside fumbling until a security guard recognized me and let me in. "Strange," he muttered, "your access must have been deactivated." I checked the calendar later. My name was missing from the invite list. When I asked Andre, he shrugged and said it must have been a mistake. But I could see the shadow of Sloane's influence in his hesitation. At corporate events, Sloane made subtle remarks dressed as jokes. When I wore my modest navy dress, she leaned to a colleague and whispered just loud enough, "Smells like bleach around here. Old habits die hard." Laughter followed her like perfume, leaving me standing there humiliated, pretending not to hear. She controlled more than whispers. One day, a junior employee showed me an internal memo. New PR guidelines required all official photographs to exclude non-active personnel. My face, once displayed proudly in the company's story, was gone from the brochures. The walls bore Andre's smile, Sloane's polished profile, but no trace of the woman who had scrubbed the first floors at midnight. The cruelest part was Andre's silence. He never spoke against me, but he never defended me either. When Sloane ordered the marketing team to rebrand with a modern image, he simply nodded. When she mocked my thrift store shoes, he shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing. I wanted to shake him to remind him of the nights he slept in a janitor's closet while I mopped the halls. But his silence told me he had forgotten, or perhaps chosen to forget. It wasn't just words and images. I began noticing charges on the corporate card weekend trips to Miami, luxury handbags, dinners at places where the wine alone cost more than a week's salary for one of our cleaners. I asked Ramon, our CFO, if these were approved expenses. He looked at me with uneasy eyes and said, "Andre signed off, but I thought you knew." Knew I clenched the receipts in my hands. Sloane had turned the company into her personal purse, and Andre either didn't see it or didn't care enough to stop it. Still, I held my tongue. I thought patience might calm the storm. Maybe I reasoned if I endured the insults, Andre would remember the lessons I raised him with. But each silence only encouraged them. The tipping point came during preparations for the company's 25th anniversary gala. Sloane insisted on planning every detail. She announced in front of the executive team, "This year we will step away from the old, tired image. No more outdated symbols. We are moving forward with a new face, a new voice, a new family." The old, tired image was me. Everyone in that room knew it. No one dared meet my eyes. I walked out of the conference room with a pit in my stomach. Outside, I caught Ramon by the elevator. He hesitated, then whispered, "Loretta, you should know. Sloane told PR not to seat you at the head table during the gala. She said it would look unprofessional to have you there." I gripped the elevator rail as the doors closed, steadying myself. They wanted me erased completely, silently, efficiently. That night, alone in my kitchen, I replayed every moment in my mind. The laughs, the whispers, the closed doors, the missing photos. I asked myself if I had made a mistake giving Andre so much control. I remembered Charles's voice promising that our sweat would build a future, and I wondered if that future was now being stolen by the very woman who mocked me to my face. I wanted to believe Andre still respected me, but as days passed, his visits grew shorter, his calls less frequent. When I tried to talk about Sloane's behavior, he deflected. "She's under pressure," he said. "She just wants the company to thrive," but I knew better. It wasn't about the company, it was about pride, image power. By the time the gala arrived, the tension was thick enough to choke on. I felt like a stranger walking into a place I had built brick by brick. And yet, I told myself to stand tall, to endure one more night. I didn't know then that humiliation waited like a blade in the spotlight, ready to cut deeper than ever before. The gala glittered like a crown jewel. Crystal chandeliers threw shards of light across marble floors, and every guest wore their finest. A jazz band played near the stage, filling the room with soft brass and piano. I stood near the back, invisible among the silk gowns and tailored suits, clutching a glass of water like it was armor. This was supposed to be a celebration of 25 years of labor sacrifice and triumph. But as the evening unfolded, it became a theater for my public shaming. When the host announced the keynote speech, I expected Andre to step forward. Instead, Sloane glided onto the stage in a sequined gown, her voice magnified across the ballroom. Tonight, she began smiling wide, "We honor a company that has grown beyond its humble origins. We are stepping boldly into the future, modern, powerful, and refined." Her words hit like stones. Humble origins, refined. She didn't need to name me. Every guest knew where those barbs were aimed. I forced myself to breathe to stay calm. But then she leaned into the microphone and delivered the cut meant to finish me. "We must leave the old image behind. This company cannot be represented by outdated faces clinging to the past." Laughter rippled across the room, awkward but real. My ears rang, my vision blurred. She had reduced decades of sweat into a punchline. I stepped forward, heart pounding. If I didn't speak now, I would vanish completely. As I approached the head table, whispers rose, cameras turned. I caught sight of Andre, my son, my only child. His expression was blank, his eyes refusing to meet mine. "Sit down," Loretta Sloane hissed through her smile. "Don't embarrass yourself." "I'm not here to embarrass myself," I said, my voice trembling, but firm. "I came to congratulate my son." Sloane raised her hand sharply, signaling to security. "Escort her out. She doesn't belong at this table." The guard hesitated. Guests shifted uncomfortably in their seats. My cheeks burned as humiliation poured over me. A waiter passed his tray wobbling. Champagne splashed across my sleeve, cold and sticky like liquid mockery. Gasps followed, and then the cruel clicking of phone cameras. My disgrace was being recorded. Andre sat frozen. Not a word, not a gesture of defense. His silence screamed louder than Sloane's cruelty. Something broke inside me then. A lifetime of suppressed pride surged to the surface. I clenched my fists until my nails dug into my skin. I lifted my chin and said clearly, though my voice cracked, "I built this company with these hands." The room went silent for a heartbeat, but the silence was not respect. It was pity. Tears pricked my eyes, but I refused to let them fall here, not in front of her. I turned and walked toward the balcony doors, every step heavy with the weight of betrayal. Behind me, applause rose again for Sloane, as if nothing had happened, as if I were a ghost, walking out of my own story. Out on the balcony, the night air wrapped around me, cool and sharp. The city skyline glittered beyond, indifferent to my pain. I leaned against the railing, staring at the glowing company logo projected on the screen inside. My company. My name hidden beneath theirs. For the first time in years, anger surged stronger than grief. I thought of Charles, of the promises we made to build something for Andre, not for a woman who sneered at my calluses. I whispered to the night, "If respect isn't given, then I'll take it back." The humiliation of that gala was meant to bury me. Instead, it lit a fire I thought had burned out long ago. They believed I was powerless, outdated, irrelevant, but they didn't know the truth, not yet. And soon the truth would change everything. That night, long after the gala ended, I sat at my kitchen table with papers spread before me. The humiliation still burned, but underneath it simmered something stronger resolve. I pulled out a worn leather folder I hadn't touched in years. Inside were the documents I had guarded like sacred relics, the revocable living trust, the stock certificates, the corporate charter. Each page bore my name in bold print. I was not just the founder, I was the majority owner. The company had never left my hands. Sloane thought she had erased me. She didn't realize she had been mocking the very woman who held the keys to everything she flaunted. I called Felicia Grant, my lawyer, at midnight. She answered with groggy surprise, but her voice sharpened as soon as I explained. "Loretta, you still control the board. You can call a special meeting any time. You don't need their permission." I stayed silent too long, I told her. Now it's time they see whose table this really is. The next morning, I met with Ramon, our CFO. He looked exhausted, as if carrying secrets had aged him. I laid the trust agreement on his desk. His eyes widened, and then he exhaled a breath he'd been holding for years. "I knew, but I wasn't sure if you wanted it revealed," he admitted. "Loretta, if you call the board, they'll have no choice but to acknowledge you." "I'm not here to humiliate them," I said firmly. "But I won't let disrespect rule what I built. We'll handle this with dignity, not spite." Together we drafted notices for a special board meeting. Every letter carried my signature and the embossed seal of the company. There would be no doubt, no loophole, no denial. That afternoon I watched the video clip a guest had sent me from the gala. It showed Sloane smiling as I was escorted out, her laughter glinting like broken glass. The shame twisted in my gut, but it also fueled my determination. She believed I was powerless. She believed wrong. I gathered more evidence emails where she excluded me from meetings, receipts for lavish corporate expenses, memos, erasing me from promotional materials. Not because I needed revenge, but because I wanted the truth to stand unshakable. For 25 years, I had chosen humility over recognition. I thought that would protect Andre, that it would build his character. Instead, it allowed arrogance to grow unchecked in the woman he married. But humility did not mean weakness, and silence did not mean surrender. As I sealed the envelopes addressed to every board member, my heart steadied. Tomorrow I would walk back into that boardroom not as a forgotten widow, not as the poor woman mocked at a gala, but as the rightful owner. I whispered to myself like a vow. They thought I was a guest at their table, but I am the one who built the table, and soon everyone would know it. The boardroom smelled of fresh coffee and polished wood, but tension hung heavier than the air conditioning. Andre sat at the head of the long glass table adjusting his tie nervously. Sloane perched beside him, radiant in a tailored white suit, her chin high. She didn't look worried. She didn't know. One by one, board members filed in whispering greetings. When they saw me enter, whispers sharpened into surprise. I carried no designer purse, wore no silk scarf, only my leather folder and steady steps. Ramon walked behind me, placing a stack of binders on the table. Andre finally spoke. "Mom, why are you here?" "This is an executive session," Felicia, my lawyer, interrupted smoothly. "Mr. Price." "Mrs. Price is not only entitled to be here. She called this meeting." Confusion flickered across Andre's face. Sloane smirked. "She doesn't have that authority." Felicia opened the folder and slid out the documents. "She does. By law and by record, Loretta Price is the majority owner of this company. She holds controlling interest. Every share certificate, every trust agreement says so." Gasps broke the room's stillness. Ramon rose and distributed copies of the documents, each stamped with official seals. The board members bent over the pages, eyes widening as they realized the truth. Sloane's smirk faltered. "This is some kind of trick." "Andre runs this company." "No," I said, my voice firm but calm. "Andre manages it because I allowed him to. But ownership has always been mine. I built this company when I scrubbed offices at night. I expanded it contract by contract. I gave Andre the chance to lead, hoping he would honor what his father and I started. But instead you used my silence as a weapon." Andre's mouth opened, then closed. He looked down at his hands, shame darkening his face. I laid out the evidence next emails, excluding me from meetings receipts of Sloane's personal spending on company accounts, the video of the gala where I was humiliated. Each item landed like a hammer on the polished glass table. This isn't about revenge, I told them. It's about respect for the workers who clean at dawn, for the contracts we honor, for the legacy we've built. I will not allow arrogance to rot this company from within. A board member, Ms. Daniels, cleared her throat. Mrs. Price, what do you propose? I inhaled slowly. Effective immediately, Sloane Beckett is barred from representing this company in any capacity. Her spending will be investigated and all accounts reviewed. Andre will remain in the company, but under probationary oversight. He will meet performance metrics not only in profits but in culture, respect, and integrity. Murmurs filled the room. Some nodded. Others whispered. Felicia leaned toward me and whispered, "They'll follow your lead. You hold the votes." I looked at Andre. "Son, I love you, but love does not excuse silence. Silence in the face of cruelty is betrayal. You let me stand humiliated while the woman beside you laughed. If you want to keep your place here, you will rebuild not with her arrogance, but with humility. You will earn back the respect you lost." His eyes shimmered with tears he fought to hide. He nodded, voice hoarse. "Yes, Mama. I understand." Sloane exploded. "You can't do this. This is my life, my future." I met her fury with stillness. "No, Sloane, this was never yours. You mocked me as poor, but it was my name on every contract, my sweat on every floor, my sacrifice behind every dollar. You treated me like a guest at my own table. Today, that ends." The vote was swift. Every board member sided with me. Sloane stormed out, heels striking the floor like gunshots. The doors slammed behind her, but her power evaporated with the sound. When the meeting ended, I remained at the table alone. I traced the polished wood with my fingertips, remembering the rough concrete floors I once scrubbed. So much had changed, yet the foundation was still mine. Later that week, I announced new initiatives, a scholarship fund for employees' children's stricter governance on spending mandatory training on respect and workplace dignity. The press release highlighted not just profits, but principles. The company would not only grow, it would grow with heart. On the day the new policy handbook was distributed, I stood before employees in the lobby. The company logo glowed behind me, bold and untarnished. I spoke plainly. This company remembers who raised it, and from now on it will honor every hand that helps it stand. The applause that followed wasn't forced or polite. It was real. For the first time in a long while, I felt whole. When the storm passed, I finally allowed myself to breathe. The humiliation I had suffered at the gala no longer defined me. Instead, it became the turning point that reminded me who I was and what I had built. I walked through the offices in the weeks that followed, hearing employees greet me with warmth instead of pity. They knew the truth now, not just that I owned the company, but that I had never abandoned it. Respect returned not because I demanded it, but because I proved that silence does not mean weakness. Andre came to me one evening, his voice quiet, his eyes full of regret. "Mama, I failed you. I let her speak for both of us, and I let you stand alone. I'm sorry." I placed my hand on his shoulder. "Son, love without respect is empty. If you want to carry this company forward, you must carry it with both." The lesson was simple, but it cut deep. Family can betray you. Pride can blind you. But dignity is a treasure no one can take unless you surrender it. To those who listen to my story, I leave this truth. Honor the hands that built your table. Do not confuse humility with weakness, and do not allow arrogance to destroy what sacrifice has created, because in the end, respect is worth more than gold.